Welcome back to the Papers Podcast. And I can't remember our tagline, but it's all about the health professions education literature that we're reading and unpacking for you. And mostly we do this to make Lara laugh. And there you go. My mission's accomplished. So Lara's here.
Hi, everybody.
Linda's here.
Howdy.
And John is here. And John's special today, not only because he's got a shirt with a special pocket, but also because I think John's entire analysis of this paper was written by ChatGPT, but I'm not sure. So go ahead, John. What do you got?
Jason, I have a feeling that when you say the word special, you're not meaning it in the kind, nice way. You're meaning it in a way that's a little itsy-bitsy patronizing, aren't you? Just this is an aside. Do you know why I keep grabbing my shirt? I've discovered a secret pocket in this shirt. And it's freaking me out. And so I thought my shirt had been bugged.
Your shirt?
Yeah.
Where is it?
It's right here. There's
Don't ask.
On the inside of your shirt?
He's unbuttoning his shirt, everybody.
Yeah, there's a secret pocket
God,
right in here.
There is a secret pocket.
I don't want to do that. Okay. Who's going to throw to John?
I'll throw John.
Right. Well, the title of the episode this week is Ex Machina, the Disruption of Health Professions Education with AI. I am going to make an argument that HPE is getting disrupted. Don't believe me? Then ask any of your students, ask your kids, ask a teacher, and ask them what generative AI is doing to assignments and tests. I know that my own university is, what's the technical word? Freaking out about what generative AI is causing. Now, this idea of disruptive innovation is coined by Clayton Christensen from Harvard, is when a product or a service, it's usually technology-based, enters an established market and displaces the traditional leaders of that market with a better and typically a lower cost alternative. So think of Uber and taxis, think of Facebook and conventional media. So ChatGPT, Bing, Bard, and more, all of these generative AI apps, which are based on large language models, are starting to change and challenge how we think about education. I just published a randomized controlled trial using an AI-based clinical diagnosis app to see how we can integrate it into a high-stakes end-of-medical school national examination. It was our attempt at answering a new version of the age-old question of, should we do open book exams? But I worry that our research that was only published last month is now probably irrelevant and already out of date. That's how disruptive these chatbots are. So, Jason, what is your use of AI in health professions education?
Okay. Honestly, I am late to the party. So I'm not an early adopter on this one. I am the late majority. And I just started typing stuff into it recently. I did notice that other people are publishing and commenting. There's a guy on Medium, if you know that Reddit, that platform. There's a doc who said he put all of his cases in from the night before and then checked his percentage of accurate diagnoses. So I know other people are doing this. People in my department are talking about using it to help make notes, and I am not yet using it. So maybe I should. I know that my colleagues are also preparing talks, like the outline of their talk. They just type in their slides and all of a sudden an outline comes forward. So I'm late to the party. Please forgive me, everybody. Bring me along.
I think the technical description there, Jason, is a laggard. So yes. Linda, you're looking pensive. Do you have a worry about AI in HPE?
Yeah, I am concerned about its misuse. I do think that it has potential, but it can be misused by replacing learner thinking or, for that matter, practitioner thinking, as opposed to complementing what we do, which I think you'll get to a little bit later.
Okay. Lara, you were always a ray of sunshine. Yeah, are you?
Oh, dang, dude.
So I'm hoping for something optimistic. All I hear now is how Skynet is building the Terminator in health professions education. Do you have a hope for generative AI?
Absolutely. I think it's great. I'm all in. Let's do this. So all the flapping of wings you're hearing right now with people fretting over this, right? It's just fluff, 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 fluff.
And spinning in circles.
This reminds me of when my mom, do you remember? Okay, time machine. Name the movie. Name the
Wayne's
movie.
World.
Thank you. When Word came out with Clippy, the little automated paperclip on your screen. Do you remember Clippy?
yeah, Clippy.
My mom freaked out because there was can I help you write this letter? And she's like, nobody's going to know how to write a letter in 10 years. It's going to be awful. I'm like, no.
That's true. She was
No,
right.
you can still write a letter. Clippy, a different version is built in there and it fixes it. It's fine. I have no problem with that. AI is a tool. My iPhone is a tool. I have a terrible sense of geography, largely probably because I've downloaded all navigation to my phone. That's fine. I don't care. I'm not a lesser person for it. I just rely on technology differently. My spelling is probably worse because Word fixes it. I really don't care. Most of my writing, 95% of it is on a screen. It's just another tool. So let's get savvy with it. Let's be thoughtful about it. We can use this. It's not going to replace humans.
So what I heard and understood from your answer is I'm not going hiking away from a cell tower with you.
Basically. But you knew that already. I can get lost in downtown Sudbury, people. Let's just say that.
Linda, you had one final comment.
Well, yeah, because Word may be fixing your words,
Yeah.
but it could also be changing your words. So, and that's the problem. You know, the spell check that puts in something that you totally didn't expect, you don't read it carefully, and then you get a lot of laughter back.
Yeah, that's true. You know what the other thing is that's interesting about ChatGPT is that I was doing a workshop delivery session at Penn at the University of Pennsylvania, and we had some other guest speakers there. One of them was Tony Artino. And the people in the session asked ChatGPT to write an introduction for me and for Tony Artino. It was almost verbatim. Now, if you know Tony and I, we have completely different lines of programs of research. Like, we're completely different scholars. But the description was almost verbatim the same. Very generic, very, they are education researchers,
All right, so let's move on to the actual paper. If you want a taste of when Skynet meets the National Board of Medical Examiners, then this is the podcast for you. If you don't, then avoid the dystopian future that we might predicate here, and we'll move forward. So this is with the purpose as stated by the authors: to evaluate the performance of ChatGPT on questions within the scope of the United States Medical Licensing Examination Step 1 and 2. And if you're from outside of the US, these are required examinations taken early in medical school. One is a basic science exam, physiology and immunology. The second is a clinical reasoning exam, diagnosis and management. What they did is they had two sets of medical knowledge questions to test the accuracy of OpenAI's chatbot, ChatGPT, and they used version 3.5. And as of this recording, there's a version 4, which is even better and performs with greater accuracy, depending on who you believe. 100 questions from an exam bank of thousands and 187 questions from the National Board of Medical Examiners were used to develop two exam banks, one on basic science, the other on clinical reasoning. And then they had that also compared with two other chatbots of earlier generations. They only used questions that were text-based. Anything that required an image, which these large language models can't cope with or deal with, were excluded. So essentially, you had two sets of questions from two different sources compared to ChatGPT, compared to two other things. So if you can imagine what that analysis looks like. Let me just quickly ask you, this is a pretty simple kind of experiment. Lara, Jason, Linda, any concerns with how they set it up? Did they introduce some kind of bias, or did it make sense to you what they did?
This worked fine for me. I didn't have any problems with it, but I am going to ask you a clarification question, John. So if I do consults for methods sometimes, I'm going to ask you for one, because I understand the methods, and I found, except when we get to the chi-squared tests, can you give me I found a very useful BMJ link, and I'll share that I'll give that for the show notes. But the chi-square tests tell me what?
I wish you to share the BMJ link with me so I can read from it. Okay. Please, if you are a psychometrician, what I'm going to say next, please don't send me the hate mail. Send it to Lara's email address.
Why do I get it?
Well, because I'm a fragile person. So there's two types of data that we have typically when we're looking at quantitative data. One is continuous data, where you can parse that number further and further and further. So 1.1111111 to whatever. That's continuous data.
That's the kind of data that Lara uses when she does her rating scale at the end of each article.
Correct.
Thank you, Linda.
So with With continuous data, there is a distribution of responses from your data set. And typically, we hope that you will have a normal distribution, but not always. And so when you want to compare whether the results reflect chance or whether they reflect signal, you can use classic tests. And we've talked about these ad nauseum. The most classic of tests is the t-test. But analysis of variance is another example where you're analyzing continuous data. The problem, of course, as soon as you have categorical data, where it is medical student versus resident, PBL versus not PBL, there's no mean. It's just you're either in one group or the other group, and all you have is a mode. How many times that data set went to that. And so what a chi-square allows you to do is compare what's the likelihood of this distribution of whether you fell into this group or that group is occurring by chance or because of signal. And then when you start to derive the actual equation, it gets kind of tricky. And now I'm getting into the hand waving, but it's the difference between what you observe and what you expect. And there's a way of doing that observation, which I think you can probably derive the equation from. But essentially what a chi-square is trying to do for you, it can do it for multiple comparisons, but the easiest way is to think of a 2x2. So a 2x2 table where you have 4 parts. That would be the classical kind of chi-square test that we'd see in health professions education, but you don't have to be limited to 2x2. You could go 3x8. It just changes what the actual analysis looks like and the degrees of freedom with which you can express your answer. But a classic 2x2 would say, I have 3 in my one box, 10 in my other box, et cetera, and depending on the difference of the square of what you observe and what you expect, you can say this finding reflects chance or it reflects an actual signal. And that's scored along a scale of 0 to 1 in both directions. That makes sense?
That's awesome, John.
That does make sense. Yes.
So the paper is by Gilson et al. The actual title is How Does ChatGPT Perform on the United States Medical Licensing Examination? The Implications of Large Language Models for Medical Education and Knowledge Assessment, published in JMIR, Medical Education 2023 of this year. I guess 2023 of this year sounds a little redundant. Now, does it?
Yeah, it does, but it only sounds 2023 this year now redundant. Anyway, JMIR, I'm guessing, is Journal of Medical Informatics Research or something like that?
No, so I've actually published there. It's the Journal of Medical Internet Research.
Medical Internets Research.
Correct.
All right.
Okay.
Moving on. As you
back
were.
to you, John.
Okay. Jason, Linda, did you have any other concerns about how they set up this experiment?
So I have no concerns about the mechanics. I'll have some concerns which I'll reserve for the results about the implications of their design. So that their design is obviously an experiment. So they've narrowed it down and removed some things and made it cleaner. And that's totally fine. They described it really well. It just how much you can generalize from that is now a discussion.
I have nothing to add to my learned colleagues' discussion of methods.
I had one concern, which is why did I think of this? This is such a nice experiment that is going to get talked about. That's not really hard to do. You just need a summer student or a research assistant, and you plug in the data, and bam, paper.
I think they're like all over the talk shows too, right? So that this has exploded. This person's like got a new career.
Yeah, it's a very clean study. This is not complicated. It's gorgeous.
If you had done this, John, you would have a new car by now.
And yet, here we are.
And yet I didn't.
But you're with us.
Okay, so there I could be in crappy car studios too.
Gonna say.
So here's the findings. Across all 4 question banks, the accuracy of ChatGPT ranged from a high of 64% to a low of 42%. And in one data set, it achieved the passing score required for a 3-year medical student. And I think that's really the punchline they're trying to tell us, which is ChatGPT has the ability, as it gets better and better and better, to perform well on our current versions of knowledge tests. It outperformed, so that's ChatGPT outperformed a number of earlier large language, natural language processing models. These models performed at or worse than chance. And as question difficulty increased, ChatGPT's accuracy dropped, likely a function of the neural network and the sophistication it's working with. Its logical reasoning was consistent across all questions, and the necessary internal information, so the information you could find in the question or in the stem, was present in nearly every time with no statistical difference between correct and incorrect answers. Where ChatGPT fell down, of course, is finding the external information, the information not found in the question necessary to successfully answer the question. And it was missing anywhere from a quarter to a half of the time when ChatGPT got the answer wrong. Logical errors were most common, while statistical errors, estimation of disease prevalence or just doing simple calculations, were highly uncommon. So, Linda, Jason, Lara, what do you think of the results? Is Skynet actually being realized in health professions education?
So a couple of things. First of all, it is a little concerning that depending on what exam, up to 2/3 of the questions were up to 2/3 of the answers were correct by ChatGPT. So that does concern me a bit. I do wonder a couple of things. First of all, how they measured question difficulty, because they said the accuracy dropped with question difficulty. And I suspect that, in fact, the difficult questions were the ones where there was some logic needed. And that's where ChatGPT fell down. So those are two things. And sounds like what we need ChatGPT for are those simple things, that what's the prevalence of this disease in this particular context versus how can I logically think through this problem.
That's you, Jason.
What? Who changed the order?
Nobody.
That was my sister Lara there with their 12 PhDs.
Yeah, and I know
Okay.
I can count order.
Yeah, thank you. So I was trying to be a gentleman, but if you want me to go ahead, I will. So here's my take on this paper. This is so ho-hum. Like this should have been saved for our Christmas episode, because all this paper shows is data in, data out. You just run it through an algorithm, it spits out something, and it falls down when the data is inadequate for it to have the right answer. So I didn't find the implications of this interesting at all, and I thought the way the discussion was framed was outrageous. That this is now at the level of a med student. Like, that's such a headline grabber. That's such a clickbait kind of a scholarly answer. In no way is this like a medical student. And if you had a real patient in front of you, or if you did another more realistic question, maybe it reflects on how we write questions, that they have a bunch of recall things. But I just didn't find this remarkable at all. Clever, but not remarkable with any implication.
Okay, so John, you keep making the Skynet reference, so I'm going to go Sarah Connor on you here.
Ooh, love it.
You're welcome. But I'm not going to take down the AI, because for me, this study shows us what we can use it for, right? Critical thinking is a human trait. Humans analyze available facts and evidence and observations and arguments, and we form judgments. We form interpretations. And so what ChatGPT or these AIs can do is synthesize, quantify, and regurgitate. And this then tells us that we don't need to ask test questions of learners so they can regurgitate, so that they can learn something and put it back on paper within a few days or weeks or whatever. That's not a useful. What this paper is suggesting to us is that let's download that job to tech, and let's enable our learners, our future clinicians, to be thoughtful, critical thinkers who engage in judgments and who make inference and who build arguments. And let's harness that. Fine, I got no problem with this.
So my take on this paper is I think it gives us an opportunity, and it also gives us a caution. The opportunity is the outputs, Jason, are not one-word answers. I think if you saw the actual output as in the appendix.
Yeah, I saw.
It actually gives an explanation and a rationale.
Yep.
And I think this becomes a really interesting personalized tutor. I don't understand what the difference is between nephritis and nephrotic syndrome.
Neither do I.
So, well, there you go. Go ask ChatGPT to generate that answer for you and then say, explain it to me in a different way, or explain it in this way, or I'll give the example of the case of the patient you just saw in rounds this week when the attending just kind of gave you an answer that didn't make sense. Ask ChatGPT to explain what chi-square is to you. And so ChatGPT for our health professions learners might become their personalized tutor for core information that's all kind of foundational, not for the sophisticated type of practice that our human tutors will still be required. The second part that I think ChatGPT cautions us about is that if we maintain our conventional assessments that says we want knowledge to be uploaded into the cortex of our trainees so they can download it on paper, and somehow we can use that as the summative determination that you're competent for contemporary physician practice, that's problematic. We should be asking our learners to use ChatGPT in the clinical environment all the time to help them work through problems. And our assessments of competence should be exactly what Lara is arguing, that very sophisticated reasoning process that takes into balance all of the data that's produced, all of the simplistic outputs that ChatGPT can provide us, but then marries it with what are the expectations of patients? What is the restraints from our clinical context? And how do we actually arrive at some kind of management of these complex, ethical, and nuanced solutions? Because ChatGPT cannot replace that type of reasoning presently. All right. I saw Lara wanting to jump in and Jason, so I'll give you one more chance before we go to our rounds of votes.
So the only comment I wanted to make was about the discussion and this idea that these AI tools can now replace small group participants and those sorts of things. And you can have a small group of AI. One of the things I'm going to push back really hard on that idea, because I think one of the things that happens in small group learning is very social. And some of that social learning, some of that social work is actually, and the learning that happens for individuals is about the peers. It's about the community. It's about, the pride of being right in front of an audience. It's about the relief of knowing that other people find it hard too. It's the pressure not to be the weak link in the learning group. Like there's a lot of things that real people bring in those small learning groups that AI just can't.
Oh, I'd never meant it was going to replace the PBL tutor. I meant it was going to be, rather than going onto Wikipedia to say what is the difference between nephrotic syndrome and nephritic syndrome, I'm going to do that in my study cubicle by myself.
I know, seriously, there were two conclusions of this paper. One was that they're equivalent to a third-year med student. The other was it could replace small groups and make med students even more lonely. And both of those gave me the heebie-jeebies. I have a question, actually, just to finish off this discussion, and that is, could it really replace asking basic questions in the course of a health professional's novice stage of development? Because one of the things about expertise is you need chops. Like you need the basics in your head in order to build your expertise. Like you need the basics. So it's not like it's all going to be on the web and you just pull from it, because you have to recognize the elements in order to do higher order thinking. So don't you think there's still a role for asking questions that are basic?
Yeah, I think Jason's right on that. I think about when I have to go and look up facts, I often go to one or more, web-based things, and it never answers my questions because it's very, very simple, and I'm already seeing patients who are very, very complex, and so it can't do that. So you may be right. I'll give that to you, Jason. That small thing.
Thank you. I'm taking that. That's twice today that someone called me right, so I'm like done.
I think you need to understand that there's things such as a kidney. I think you need to understand that protein is bad in your urine. I think you need to understand that there are manifestations of what nephrotic syndrome can be. And so if you have no concept of any of that, then when ChatGPT says you have nephrotic syndrome, what do you do with that? How do you even make sense of that? And so I wouldn't set up these straw dog arguments where we say the extremes of either. You don't need any expertise and you must have all of it in your brain. I think you can have accelerated understanding when generative AI helps you access or explain to you information in a repetitive way, and you use it alongside all of the clinical experience you're acquiring.
One more.
Anyway, go ahead.
I was just going to say one more change of topic, though. Do you want to go on?
quick change of topic, and then let's
Okay,
go
quick
vote.
change of topic. 2 things. You kept saying nephrotic syndrome, so I've Googled that now. Just want you to know I'm a little smarter for not AI because,
But did you
I
put
did
it in?
AI. I put it in the Google, like the Google taught me. So it's a form of AI. Did you guys get a new word out of this paper? Was there a word in the paper you didn't know before? Armamentarium?
No, that's totally a normal word. That's a Canadian word.
How is that a Canadian word? I didn't know that word.
Well, that's
No,
part of
an
hockey.
internal. That's
Yeah,
also an internal medicine word.
Armamentarium?
For sure, yeah.
Yeah.
All your
Yeah.
drugs are in your armamentarium. Yeah, John's slapshot is in his armamentarium, such as it is.
No,
But
it's
that
what
is the
John wears to
armamentarium.
protect his portions of his anatomy that is an armamentarium.
that too. That too. Yes.
All right, that's all.
That's armamentarium right there.
All
Yeah.
right. So I thought the cutest part, and I mean that in a positive way, the cutest part of this paper is they actually had ChatGPT write their
Yes.
conclusion. They wrote their own conclusion.
So cheeky.
And then they had ChatGPT write their conclusion. So here's what ChatGPT said about the study. Overall, this study suggests that ChatGPT has the potential to be used as a virtual medical tutor, but more research is needed to further assess its performance and usability in this context. Okay, so let's go to the round of votes. Regardless of your feelings around generative AI, let's talk about the methods of what I would say is a very straightforward experiment. Linda, Lara, Jason. 1 to 5, this is ordinal, not categorical data, but let's not start splitting hairs there, Varpio.
Okay, so I'll say 3, and I think you said it. This is a very straightforward methodology. Nothing special.
Yeah, I was going to give it a 4 for the same reason.
Yep. I'm actually going to agree with Lara on this one. I know it's shocking, but I think she's right.
I'm going to give it a 4 as well. Just because it's simple doesn't mean we should score it lower. Sometimes elegant is the way to go. Now, educational impact. Is this going to change your practice in some way? We'll go reverse order. Jason, Lara, Linda.
No. 1.
So I'm going to give this paper a 2 because it doesn't change my practice at all. But it does give a good punchline, right? It does spawn a good conversation. How much basic knowledge testing do we need to do? So take it back. I'm not giving it a 2. I'm giving it a 3.
Well, I'm glad you went to a 3 for the same reason that I'm going to go to a 3. Plus, frankly, I love the fact that they had ChatGPT write their conclusions for her.
I'm going to give it a 4. I'm tempted to pull one of those Varpios and you get an extra mark for this and that.
Oh, you want to
And
give
they
it
get
a
an extra mark
0.5.
in my
You
mind.
want to give it a 0.5.
No,
Do it.
do not want to do that.
it.
I'm not
Do
doing
it.
that. I'm not doing that. It goes against everything I believe.
Everything.
I like the fact that this is a first past the post paper. This is, and maybe that's a Canadianism, which means they're the first to write on this domain, which is a hat tip to JMIR, which is a journal I've published a couple papers in. They are very efficient at how you upload, and they're very efficient in the copy editing process and the peer review process. They have found efficiencies by using technology. So I think this is one of the first papers that I could find that was meaningful around the implications. And I think it stems a number of conversations about understanding how this disruptive innovation is changing health professions education. And for us to pull an ostrich and just simply stick our head in the stacks at our library is not going to be a solution. So I'm going to give it a 4.
Well, there you have it.
There you have it. So we'd love to hear from you. You don't actually have to write anything. Just ask ChatGPT to send us an email.
Please.
You can find us on social. We'd love to hear what you think about big data next. We're going to be an all technology podcast next time. Is that what we're doing? No, I see. I'm seeing dirty looks from all of my
No.
co-hosts.
For our robot overlords.
That's fine.
Yeah.
I'll go all Linda Hamilton on them.
Actually, you know what? I do have a suggestion for everybody. I think you should all go to ChatGPT right now, everybody listening, and ask it to give you a bio of your life and then check and see how accurate it is. I just typed in John's. I can read it to you. It's pretty short.
Yeah. Great hockey player. A face for radio. All of those things.
You're using all my best lines, John.
All right. Well, that's it for us at the Papers Podcast. Thanks for listening.
Talk to you later.
Bye-bye.
You've been listening to the Papers Podcast. we hope we made you just slightly smarter. The podcast is a production of the Unit for Teaching and Learning at the Karolinska Institutet. The executive producer today was my friend Teresa Sörö. The technical producer today was Samuel Lundberg. You can learn more about the Papers Podcast and contact us at www.thepaperspodcast.com. Thank you for listening, everybody, and thank you for all you do. Take care.